we recording?
Yep.
Perfect. It is 7 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. I am showing that all members are present and we have a quorum. Starting out on our agenda, we have citizen comment period with the library board. Are there any citizens who wish to make any comments to the board?
I did just want to, so Susan Raymond for the record. I just wanted to invite you guys again. We have another meeting coming up at the Catherine Ann Porter Literary Center at 508 West Center Street. It is Friday, March 24th at 7:30. And this time it is Jericho Brown, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. And so it's very, very super exciting and prestigious, exciting. I can't say that enough. Anyway, I'm thrilled, and I hope you guys can join us. So that's Friday, March 24th. Thank you.
Anyone need to report later? All right, hearing no other comments, we'll move on to consent items. Consideration of possible action to approve the February 9th library board meeting minutes. Jessica, as always, did a great job of typing them up. We'll take a few minutes to look them over and please let us know if there are any concerns or edits. If everyone's comfortable, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
There's a motion,
Second.
there's a second, all in favor, opposed? Thank you. Continued business. Item 1, update and discussion of library board training resources for new board members. Morgan, I believe you put this together. Do you want to speak on?
So I kept it kind of short. It says 4 pages to give somebody a reference of everything that they're going to need to know and where to find it. And I provided links. But then I also, on the last page, it's a separate page. It's from the 4-page document. It's kind of a cover of a PDF packet. So initially, back in January, Colleen had given us some of the documents in a big PDF file. I thought we could add a cover page for it, tell them what's in it, and then bookmark it, kind of like a talk for them, so that if they want to use an online reference, they can, or if they want to search it for themselves, they should know where it is anyway. So I provided both.
Perfect.
I wasn't sure though on the verbiage if you and everybody in Colleen wanted to just make a little welcome part of it, if that's how you want to express it, or if you want to add something, or if it gives the right vibe.
My only question about it is the terminology of Board of Advisors. I know this is an advisory board, but I just don't know that. So I like that reference to the advisory aspect, but I just don't, I want to make sure we're consistent with the language that the city uses. So I'm not sure what people's thoughts are on that. It's my only, I like it because it's a good reminder that it's advisory board, but I don't want it to not be consistent with the language from the city. So that's my only question.
So what the city uses advisory board.
Say it again?
The city uses advisory board.
Oh, they do.
No, I'm asking.
Well, if you look at all the material on the website, it says board members. I don't see advisory. It does say in there, it's advisory in nature. But I'm open to discussion. I'm not saying it has to be changed. I'm just, I just love other people's thoughts on that.
I think the website says advisory board.
Yeah, my minutes say Kyle Public Library Advisory Board. But that is different, I think, than Board of Advisors slightly, I guess.
It would be nice if it was. Change it to advisory board.
Yeah, advisory board will compact.
Do you have something that says something different?
Well, I mean, the trouble is sometimes I accidentally put advisory board in there because I'm used to that being the title. Because I come from a board that had that in there. And so I'm wondering if, like right here on the minutes, I'm not sure if that pre-populated that way or if that was my mistake. Let me look at this for a second quick, because, hold on, let's see what the boards and commissions. See, on the boards and commissions website, it says library board. The library board shall be responsible for providing the city council, blah, blah, blah. Library board shall be part of the proposed council's rules and regulations. Yeah, it doesn't say advisory there. Let me go to the code.
Oh, geez. Because under bills,
That's the way it's been forever.
Let's see
but other
what they
websites
say
say library
here.
board. In the articles, we were talking about how it's wrong in the articles. Right.
Exactly.
But back to this.
See, it says, library board of directors referred to as the board. Except as specifically provided in this article, the authority and powers of the board shall be advisory only. Yeah, it just refers to everybody as board or members.
Right.
Yeah. So that might be, could be something, I'm not sure where that part came from. Some of the stuff that I create is already pre-populated in the, system that we create agendas in. So, that, I'm not sure.
Maybe before you go.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So what are your thoughts? I mean, I just wanted to throw it out there as a discussion point.
I think what Joy found online says it's called the Board of Directors.
Yeah, we had a conversation about it a couple of meetings ago, because in the ordinance, the word is incorrect.
Well, the board of directors, yeah, that actually is gonna, that's the part that we're gonna change. It's gonna go under boards and commissions when we do the ordinance change.
So I guess it's a good question, what do we make the proposal? Is it gonna be just library board or library?
A good question.
So most of everything that I have that I've read, everything is just the board, committee, or commissions, and then your members. And then you have like the chair, the vice chair, and that sort of thing, the positions, right? And so when you go into the job description, it does talk about that the board advises, but it's not
It's not
an
labeled as
advisory,
advisory.
right? And that's where it starts getting confused, right? And so I think to keep it consistent with what city of Kyle has, I think I agree with you that it probably should be library board members. Library board.
And then maybe perhaps, do we have something on here that says that it's an advisory board? I haven't looked at it all the way fine too.
Yeah, I can see on page 4 where you refer to as library board advisors. So there's a few locations that verbiage is generally consistent that you have here as board of advisors. But if the open question is that even the proper name? But Joy, to your point, if we're making amendments or we're proposing amendments to the city, do we have a preference that we would recommend as part of that? Just roll it all in together as one item, put it on here for the time being, and we'll update whenever the time comes. Is there a preference for the group on title? Board advisors or advisory board or something else?
I don't know if it's just me, but Board of Advisors sounds like, you know, really like set. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Is that in a positive way or a negative way?
Well, it could be either way, really, but I don't know. A group of advisors, like, you all follow?
Well, kind of thinking about on the side, it kind of delineates board of directors, because at the board of directors, we have the power, we would hire the staff.
Right, we would have more power.
We were governing board.
Yeah, yeah.
So to speak. But here, we're not in a governing.
Right.
I don't know.
So, okay.
And I think that what, if I remember correctly, what we said we were recommending to change is in the articles, could go from what an article be. What's in Article 5 is what I think you're recommending that it's wrong, and that's what it's called, Board of Directors, and go with Article 3, because that's where all of the commissions and
boards
stuff,
are,
right?
yeah.
And there's nothing here about directors, and there's nothing here about advisors, it's all board committees and commissions. So I think you
So we're
have to-
board.
So we're board, right, so I think you have to stick with that to be consistent.
And so the other boards that are referenced outside of the, is there a consistent pattern that we see of, are they all consistently rated as just members?
Yes, so with the exception of, like some are commission,
Okay.
right, board of commission or, independent members.
And so I think you're saying is that your recommendation based off the consistency here is just Kyle Public Library Board.
Board, right, correct. Because when we applied, I think that's what we applied to, right? And I think that's what the application, if it's still up, or I think it's actually expired, but that's for, for the vacancy.
We have a recommendation. Is there a general feel that we're on board with that? Any substantive concerns, pushback?
And, Mary, again, you're just recommending that it's called the library board. That's it.
Yeah.
We do Kyle Public Library.
I
Wait,
like
City
that.
of Kyle or Kyle?
Kyle.
Are you saying city of Kyle?
Yeah.
No.
I think we're not really thinking about changing the name of the board as much as we're making sure that this welcome packet is consistent with what we already are. That's really, I think, more of what the question
And
is.
then use that same verbiage consistently
Right.
through the other changes and policies. and
Right,
things
right.
that-
I don't think it's about whether we're changing our name
Yeah.
as much as whether this is just consistent.
Perfect. The other item I want to point out on page 3 of the packet, the last paragraph above mission, outlining the day that we meet, maybe we can just refer to the city ordinance that establishes that timing, and that way, should that ever change, we just say we'll meet in accordance with this section of ordinance.
Oh, I see, not specifying the second Thursday.
Okay.
That way, should anything change or something come up, we just say that's the thing that we follow.
So what's your wording?
I'm happy to email you, Morgan, when I find the exact section of ordinance. I don't know off the top of my head which section it is, but I'll just find whatever that section is of the current city ordinances and say we'll follow this.
Sure.
In relation to that, it says right above it, a calendar of upcoming meetings and events and more. But I didn't see that here, but I do think that that's important to link to where you easily find all that stuff in the resources section. So they can quickly see, these are the next meetings, or these are the last meetings.
So I think what you're saying is that like on page 4, where Morgan, you put some great links to resources and things, are you saying, Joy, we should just try to link that section to where we currently list on the website what that calendar is?
Yes, because the paragraph says there are in this packet upcoming meetings, and so that would be what it should look.
And perhaps we could, in this first paragraph where it says, welcome to the board of the library board, we could say this advisory group or something like that, so that we get the advisory reference in there right at the beginning, possibly, so that sort of keeps that element as a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, just saying like, welcome to the team, Kyle, library board. We are excited to have you join our team. Somewhere in here, maybe say this group this advisory group or something like that, just so that there's reference to that.
Okay.
Because then we get advisory in there somewhere still.
So when we were onboarding, one of the resources that was shared in this kind of packet and training or required things was how to waive your disclosure for your public information. And I wonder if it can fit somewhere. It doesn't really fit under here in the training, but that was helpful and it was bundled together.
And that links to a note I have under the required training. Maybe we can make that a general statement of adhere to the requirements from the city secretary. And that way we list out certain requirements inside of here, but in case the city secretary has things such as that disclosure form, such as the local office, such as whatever else, we say you gotta do all that stuff. Plus, here's the open meetings and other trainings.
Question on the city secretary, when people do their oath. Last time she just popped in a meeting. Do we wait for them to initiate, or do I mention that to expect that, or I'm not sure what the right verbiage is. Should the people who get the packet look for that invitation, ask for it, reach out?
In my personal experience, I coordinated with the secretary directly and went to her office to do the office.
Did she notify you that you had to go do the oath?
I don't remember the order of operations. Either she reached out or I reached out and said, hey, what are the requirements you need to do, as I just got on the board.
He reached out to me,
They reached out to me. Yeah,
and then I went to the,
yeah, because after all the years, I had never done an oath until just this past time.
I just told you to do that, but the last time, just went to a meeting.
I don't remember the meeting.
And I think she's at the Paula. She came.
After Paula?
Yeah.
I know I had to go to the office, but, yeah. Things are tightening up.
Okay.
I think it's really cool. I love it. I think the town's really nice. It's beautiful, very welcoming. I just think it's awesome. And thank you so much for doing it.
I would feel it's awesome.
Do we envision that you would be sharing this with new board members or live somewhere?
That was a good question.
Because if you don't share it, then I think there should be a little bit about you in here, or like library staff, something.
Yeah. That is a good question. I haven't been here long enough to know exactly how the process works here as opposed to how it worked where I was before.
We all had different processes.
Yeah.
We all have
I
different
know.
experiences.
I think it would make sense for the committee to share it. I think.
so too.
Like, I think it makes sense for Spencer to share it. But I'm also cool with it, somebody else sharing it.
The only downside of having the chair share it is if there's a change or some shakeup or like, I just would hate it to fall through the cracks and not get done. I know that it is the library director's job to make all of you aware of resources for training. Not that the city secretary does the ones that are the state required, but I know that it's my domain to make you aware of the resources. So, I don't know, maybe, it sort of feels like maybe.
Well, let's do this. Let's maybe leave it more open-ended and see how it works in practice. But we'll just have that agreement of it's between the director and the chair, outgoing chair, whatever is most appropriate, to coordinate with the new members to make sure they have a packet up to speed and accomplish everything else. Because at the end of the day, we can't force a future director or a future chair to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
Us anyways, just to man the ship, so.
Yeah.
I'm cool with tag teaming you.
Okay. That sounds good.
I love it.
Thank you.
We're gonna have a new member soon too, so we'll have to test it out.
Question. When I combined the PDFs, I tested it to see if the file was too big for you to receive, and I forgot to ask if you got it.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
I think everybody's email these days don't have or have enough to receive a big document, so.
Is there any other discussion on this item? So let's do this. Are you comfortable with updating based off feedback tonight? We talk about it next week for formal approval or next month for formal approval?
Yes. Cool. And then if anybody thinks of something, feel free to email me. And then I'll wait for your one email, but I'll get started on these changes that I wrote down.
Do you mind sharing it with Spencer ahead of our meeting so that he can share it out and we can test the links too?
Yes.
That works. So is there a motion to table this item until next week or next month? Sorry.
I make a motion that we table the Powell Library Board welcome back.
Perfect.
Next week.
With a
Motion
motion.
is mine.
In a second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item 2, consideration of possible action to approve the approved draft of the interlibrary loan policy. So I sent this out ahead of time. Organized it obviously with the first part being what we currently work from the draft. Second one was the draft version for you guys to review, pick apart, tell me I'm horrible, change whatever you guys want inside my here. The items that I did want to point out for discussion, some of the items such as definitions of like good standing and restricted materials and things that I know have implications beyond this one policy for everything else that we've been working on. I intentionally did not define them in this policy, thinking that in the future, whenever we update everything, we'll come to some consensus of what that term is. That's intentionally vague here. So, feedback, please.
So I looked at the loan policies for a few area libraries, Austin, Buda, San Marcos, St. Gonçalves, Pflugerville, and Cedar Park. It was really fascinating because some were about as short as ours and some were very robust. Just as inspiration for how they might frame things or things that they've called out, which felt like maybe they called it out for a reason. And so there was a few. I thought about maybe using the word eligibility instead of qualifications. And that better, I think, aligns with what you say, because you're a library card holders that are eligible, shall be eligible. Even that makes sense.
And you're referring to the title of that section?
The title of that section. There's, in Buda, they have a bullet under eligibility that says patrons must have successfully checked out and returned our materials at least once in the past year. Items returned very shortly after being checked out do not suffice. I thought that was interesting enough to raise it as an option. I don't know how important that is. I thought it would probably be more important to your earlier point to make sure that we really feel confident about that first bullet about who can, for how, like, their account is in good standing and how long they're in possession of it.
And so, Colleen, do you have any experience on the value of that point right there?
That Buda proposed?
The one about having checked out books and returned them successfully. Is that too restrictive? Is that not restrictive enough? Is that a good reason to add it in? Is there just not enough data to assess that?
It sounds to me like Buda probably added that at one point because of a problem. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't get a feeling from talking to Joelle, who's been our interlibrary loan person for a long time, that we have that kind of problem. I think we do. He did like having, that they've been with us a certain period of time. And in good standing, I mean, there's benefits of having that be, vague, so that, it doesn't say like, has never had fines, because if someone has fines, it doesn't mean they're not eligible. If there's someone who pays their fines all the time, or, you know what I mean? So good standing sort of can be beneficial to be vague, because it leaves room for, decision to be made without having to spell out all the, specifications, that, all the variables that people could have on their account. So I don't see, that type of specificity necessary based on how I understand it's going right now at our library. But I know that's probably stemmed from something.
So you would be you like be in good standing with the Kyle Public Library as that goal of eligibility?
Yes, because I think it doesn't make it feel like, it's a credit check as much, or it doesn't feel like it's, I don't know, it kind of can leave room a little bit for interpretation, because there are a lot of different circumstances that people had on their account. If you go back and look at their history, and, some things on their history would be like a little bit concerning in terms of trusting them with another library's materials, and other things. They might have a ton of things on their account, but it isn't problematic, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's sort of, I don't know. But, yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
My question would be, how would we assess someone that wouldn't be eligible based on that?
Someone who, we leave notes in our records, like if someone has, returns books repeatedly with, books, pages like stuck together, and, they say they didn't do it, but we leave notes in books when they come back, if they've had that done already. So, I mean, it's kind of like, and we may not say anything to the patron, oh, every time your books come back, they're sticky or whatever, and the pages don't open, but we may notate it, and so that's kind of how you could establish that, just the record keeping that we keep.
So would it be more of an all catch, last bullet, for any reason as deemed appropriate by the director? If you wanted to have something like that for those kinds of scenarios, because I think you have a good point. But I also think if we're keeping it first bullet, I would have no idea how often would you have someone who has only had the library card for 2 months and has already checked certain things and has built a history to then be able to then say, they have returned all the things that they have checked out on time. I don't know. So it just seems like one contradicts the other, or it's just more restricted. And I don't know how y'all feel about putting a catch all in the event that there was a patron that you didn't feel comfortable allowing them to check something out.
Or do we roll that into in good standing, into your point right there of in good standing could be a qualification of a timeline of books being checked out and returned, that you're not fully in good standing until that occurs.
But you're not defining that right now. It's the only thing. But later.
I'm sensing no strong feelings one way or the other on this topic.
I'm trying to figure out what would be.
I also feel like I cut you off and you have other ideas and feedback from the other cities. Maybe I
That
will.
was just our approach.
Yeah.
Point.
Maybe I'll sit back for a second, let you go through the rest of them, and then we roll it all in together to see what amendments.
To that point, I think that I don't have maybe as strong a feeling as other people do. I just raised it as an interesting, difficult thing to kind of push against either way. A pressure test is difficult for that one. But I had a tweak in the bullet that's be in possession of a Kyle library card.
Mhm.
I thought maybe, and I'm not sold on the verb per se, but be registered as a Kyle Public Library card holder as opposed to be in possession, which I think is a confusing word there. Cause like I literally have the card.
Mhm.
It's not active and it's expired, but I have one as opposed to registered.
Yeah.
As a card holder.
What's the, I guess, do you have a term that you use to describe this?
It would be,
Card holder.
yeah, an active card. Yeah, active member, active card holder. Have an active account. Active is the term that is in our system,
Have an active Kyle Public Library card.
right? Because they do expire after a year or two. So active would be, it would be required for it to be not expired.
That sound good?
What did you put?
Have an active Kyle Public Library card for at least 2 months prior, ...
That concludes my notes about the eligibility section.
Yes.
That section, what other section do you
I
have?
have some notes about the borrowing materials section.
Please.
Buda has 3 active requests at a time limit. So and I think there's another library too. I think Austin Public Library had limits to how many ILLs a single person could request at a time, which I thought was helpful. And then they had some kind of descriptions of things that they probably get asked this a lot, so they just have a blanket. We are unable to borrow items that are published within the last 6 months. We're unable to borrow bound periodicals like magazines, but we can request photocopies. And we do not accept this is from Austin Public Library. We do not accept requests for DVDs, audiobooks, articles, microfilm, or music CDs. And then there's another library that said we do not request anything that we currently have in our catalog. And so those were probably, I imagine, just from frequently requested items that they do not do. So maybe Joelle could also help inform what would be the specific things that might come up as frequently requested things that we would categorically deny.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And while you're
What-
having, oh, sorry.
Would that be considered under the restricted items on the back?
No, because the restricted items are for what we would lend out,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily what we would borrow.
So you're talking about, yes, got it. Mhm.
And my intention, although I recognize this may not have been clear, is that the second sentence in that borrowing materials, library staff will assess the availability, ... That would be that catch-all where the staff can make those determinations. If that's too vague, we should specify that. I agree with you, Joy. Let's get the feedback from the staff, Colleen. If there is a need for specificity there, we'll be more descriptive inside of that sentence.
I think I like the way you have it written because, to be honest, the way people request items, we can determine whether it's gonna be a purchase or an ILL. And so it kind of, like, when requests come in, we sort of sift through whether it's gonna be something we purchased for the library or whether we're gonna request it from another library. So I feel like this sentence here sort of assess the availability of requested materials. Because sometimes, and then there's a point there where people can say, would you accept an ILL? Like sometimes they're just putting in a request for materials. And so I feel like that sentence sort of fits with how we do it.
And is there value in placing a limit on the number of loaned items per patron?
I think that would be good. I do like that, yeah.
And you said, Joy, that the number from that example was 3?
Buda is 3 and Austin is 2.
And how do I remember it was 2?
What
2 per month.
Okay.
That's what we had now that I think about it.
Is there any strong opinions on a number based off of actual experience? Or is the question better assessed with staff for discussion next month?
Yeah, I don't remember why we had it limited as two in total, I don't really remember why, I just remember that being a rule, it probably came from, um, yeah, I mean, it probably came from maybe people, requesting too much or something, I don't know, and also, it is, a considerable amount of work to process these, and we only have one person doing it, so, I mean, just the workload in terms of if it was, I mean, that person has a lot of other jobs, so I think maybe just that kind of thing might be the reason too.
And would two loans per month be an appropriate, comfortable number to establish right now?
I think so.
Are we all cool with that? Not a lot of it.
I'm curious, how many people on a regular basis request per month?
Typically, they're regular patrons, they're people who are, regular patrons who are aware of it, you have to be aware of it really to even do it, so yeah, it's, I mean, I would say we probably have 10 a week, maybe. Coming and going.
That includes my list about the borrowing material section. And does anyone else had any notes about it?
I have just a mechanical, thing that I noted that in the first part of that paragraph, in the first paragraph of borrowing materials, staff is lowercase, library capital, staff lowercase, and in the second paragraph, it begins a pattern of staff being capitalized. So that's obviously a very minor issue. I can see it being okay either way. I just think it needs to be consistent.
My personal stylistic preference is to capitalize, so thanks for catching that.
I have a tendency to capitalize many things.
I love capitalizations and love commas, so.
I, going back to the wording and qualifications, be in possession of, and then I've noticed that in the borrowing, it's eligible cardholders. So why couldn't we use that phrase up in the first, be an eligible cardholder for at least 2 months? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and I think that fixing the first item you pointed out of, we're gonna rename that section eligibility. And that way, everywhere else, when we say
Okay,
eligible.
it's popping up at me.
Nope.
Yeah,
I think that you guys are both right, and this will fix all the issues.
okay, thank you.
Anything else on borrowed materials?
The service cost. I know that there's a section in the back that talks about cost and fees, but I didn't put under this section, we wanted to talk about that is that cost needs to be collected upfront. Because I think the thing that I kept going back and forth is, so there's a $2 fee, and it sounds like that would be collected on the front end. But then what about the cost of mailing the materials? So is that something that is collected at the same time or not? And if so, I think it would either we put it in here or you reference for additional information what it costs them, just to make the connection.
My preference on organization is to put all the cost things together in this one section. That way, if a future board has to amend it, they amend that one section versus trying to piecemeal throughout the entire policy to avoid kind of like, there's $2 here, but $7 over there. And how is that, what's the number there? But to your main point though, when do those fees get assessed?
That is when they, actually, I don't know the answer to that. I know that. I don't know. I think it has to be when they request it, but I can verify that. I think it's when they request it. Because I know that it has to do with, it was implemented because people had more follow through with picking up the
It's
material.
in the game.
Yeah, so I am almost positive it's at the beginning, but I will verify that. I'm sorry, I did not have that information.
And that's how I have it currently phrased in the last sentence of page 2, but we can easily fix that if that's not reality.
Okay.
I'm referring to under costs and fees,
Okay.
that first paragraph, last sentence, no order for materials from available interlibrary loan resources will be placed without first receiving payment for the
Yeah.
$2.
That's what I thought it was, but I'll double check.
Because, so here's, under the lending materials, the second paragraph, you have language that the library will not charge other libraries for the loan and will only assess fees as outlined, right? And so to keep it then consistent, then maybe that paragraph needs to also be as the last paragraph under borrowing materials. Because the last sentence in that last paragraph, you have something about fees, but it's only if you don't adhere to these requirements. But there's the adhering to the requirements, but then there's the separate fee, right? For the mailing. So I just think if nothing else, then the language needs to be consistent for the lending and for the borrowing.
So what I'll do is I'll leave the last paragraphs of both lending and borrowing to refer to fees and costs to reference the costs and fees section and move that there won't be an assessment of a interlibrary loan fee to other libraries that's prohibited under the existing policies from either the states or the feds, to make sure that's just really codified.
I think we'll just keep it consistent.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on borrowed material before we go on to lending materials?
So more about the purpose.
Okay.
So the purpose is supposed to be for both the lending and the borrowing, right? And because, I mean, that this is both asking and also well, lending as well. But when you read the paragraph, it seems like the purpose is more about borrowing and not so much about lending. And I think we probably need to make that clear, because then otherwise the first time that you really see the lending is not until you get to the second paragraph. I know it starts with lending and borrowing, but then it deviates and it's all about the borrowing.
Yeah, and just stylistically, I started borrowing and then realized we should make it lending one too. And so I made that second. So I'll add more verification about lending as part of this policy too.
And within that paragraph, that second to the last line, the library and interlibrary loan, is it policy or process? Because we're talking about the policy, right? Yep. And I don't know if this is necessary, but because we end that paragraph with the public library policy shall adhere to the requirements of the other two documents. But yet we have some items here, and I don't know if these not, because I mean, I read the other policies, but I don't know how much we deviate. One, do we need to have a catch-all to protect the library or something to the effect of specific provisions under this policy shall take precedence over any conflicting provisions found in the other two documents.
My only fear is that 10 years from now, should either of those two documents change for whatever reasons beyond maybe above our control here in Kyle, I don't want to force a future board to have to constantly go back and forth and see did that number change over time and leave it just it shall adhere to those things and keep it broader in that scope.
But there is a section somewhere on here that I think Colleen has to do a review of this at least annually, right? So would that be part of that review?
It could,
Could be.
yeah.
So if y'all think it's necessary, it's just one of the things that in reading it.
Mhm.
She wants to know what's going on in here.
She can if she wants.
What's going on?
That's all I have to say.
Okay.
So I'll have for that.
Our new Alexa announcement PA.
Oh.
They're making
it
it-
goes out to the neighborhood too.
Doesn't go out to the neighborhood. Yeah,
Because that was an issue there for a while.
no, this is just Alexa doing it for us.
Oh, it's Alexa.
Yep, yep.
You want to tackle lending material?
So,
Funding materials.
yeah,
Feedback?
I don't think it'll fit.
you've got it right there in front of you.
Oh, okay.
So like, wait a minute, that's not right.
I just saw that you have available in here twice at the beginning of that, at the lending materials, and I just don't know that it's totally clear. I think you're using,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I know what you mean, but it seems like,
I'll make available materials to available, you know.
yeah. I,
shall make materials available to interlibrary loans.
I was a little confused, but I think I know what you mean, but
yeah,
it
the
might be a
intention there
different
is that
word.
materials could be or not be available, and that's a limiting factor. And we may have limitations on the
The library.
library loan program that we could use. But I agree that doesn't flow very well. How about eligible materials,
Designated materials, requested materials.
non-restricted materials?
You don't define restricted yet until they.
Shall make, how about shall make materials to, oh, wait, what is it that you're trying to, tell me what you're trying to say.
So the distinction there is that you may have items that are available, such as a normal book, and items that are not available or restricted, such as the library of things. And so that's that first available material distinction. Then we have available interlibrary loan resources, and that is phrased that way largely out of my own ignorance. I don't know how many programs are out there that you can use or platforms that you could loan things through. And so I want to make sure that if there's a limitation on the program that could be used, we are appropriately restricting that.
Or even libraries that are participating in the loan.
Also participating instead of able, participating.
Oh,
No, I
well,
don't
I
think
don't
that's-
know that, I'm
not
using the
actually
word,
not
but
there.
I'm not saying that it should be put in there. Version.
And so Joy, what you were saying there last about if we define that first as non-restricted materials, the concern is that we define restricted materials later. We could just move restricted materials, that whole section further up before borrowing materials. That way it goes purpose, eligibility, restrictions. And then we talk about borrowing and we talk about lending. And that would resolve the issue of order and would make clearer the distinction between available materials and available resources.
I think that's tricky because we are only allowed to define our own restricted materials, not the restricted materials of other libraries.
Correct.
So then it would need to be a part of our lending definition. And it would be confusing if it came before the borrowing definition. Maybe we should unpack that sentence. That first sentence is trying to say a lot. Maybe we just need two sentences. So we're trying to say that the library will have things that we are willing to lend, and we will make those things. I'm trying not to say available. An option for ILL. And also adhere to the, definitely, I think that and shall adhere to can be a separate sentence.
So I'm
What
here.
about that second sentence? Could be the first sentence, maybe?
Yes.
All materials in possession?
Something like that could be the beginning, maybe?
Yeah.
And somehow work in the requirements established, blah, 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 as part of that sentence, maybe?
So starting all materials possession of Kyle Public Library, yada, yada, yada. In that sentence as it currently is. Something along the lines of these shall be available, for loan through the interlibrary loan resources and adhere to the requirements of those policies. I will find a way to make that English and retype it.
Is it important to have the phrasing about that it's adhering to the requirements of the Texas Interlibrary Loan Protocol and the Interlibrary Loan Code for the United States in this paragraph? Or is it where it's in the purpose paragraph, like applicable to all the other sections? So maybe we don't even need it in that section specifically, or is there a reason that we do it specifically in that section?
Add there for emphasis, but you're not wrong that we are redundant.
I like that. If you want to mention it in purpose.
I think it's always.
I like the order if it is the sentence, all materials in the possession of the Kyle Public Library shall be available for loan unless it's specifically listed as restricted as defined by the interlibrary loan policy. And the next sentence being the one about prioritize the distribution.
Okay.
And then it goes to, because then whatever that sentence becomes, that last one, the Kyle Public Library shall make available materials available,
It is.
goes right into, we're not gonna charge for that, and this is the stuff that we're not gonna let.
Okay. Basically making the truncated version of the first sentence, the last sentence of that paragraph, and shifting everything up. Cool. That
Unless
works
you
for me.
read it.
And I agree, I don't think we need the whole adhere to, that way you kind of have your purpose.
Cool. That's easy enough. Anything else before we go on to the next one? And I am cognizant of the time.
I just see 2 periods there at the end of interlibrary loan policy.
Perfect. That will be removed. Restricted?
Oh, I see that. So I had marked mine.
I'm sure this is so compelling for you guys to listen to.
I know.
I have no suggestions for that section.
Okay.
No,
No.
as the youth say.
Costs and fees?
In the sentence that says fees associated with late damage or lost materials be identified by the loaning library, but I think it should be lending library to be aligned with other language.
I'm sorry, which, the fees associated with lake damage, yada, yada. The lending library. Okay.
Is it cash only payment?
No,
Do you want to say what kind of payments are accepted? They have to pay upfront. I don't need to know.
You got
I think it says manner prescribed by the director under cost and fees. Yeah, I mean, it's just very general, but
So if you want to cash, whatever else, comma, paid in the man, or other just prescribed by the director.
I don't.
My preference would be to leave it vague. That way we allow for whatever future currencies the youths will bring up to pay with. Hey, with Bitcoins?
what, is that word practicable?
Which one, sorry?
At the end of
Yeah, I don't know if that's a word.
the eligible cardholder of these fees as soon as,
Practicable?
Yeah, that's.
is it a word?
I like
What does
that
it
word
mean?
personally, but I
I
think
don't
that
even know
using
that word.
possible would just be
I mean,
more.
we use it all the time in people's stuff, so.
Oh, okay. So it's like when it's reasonable?
When it could be done.
Okay. I didn't know that word. I thought it was a typo. Oh, my goodness.
But I think as like a patron facing policy, we should like use the most common
Yeah.
language possible. So like I would say possible.
As soon as possible.
I mean, I guess you could, then you get into it like legal terms, like, well, are we really doing it as soon as possible? Like, probably not, but I think people would understand that, but.
Yeah,
I will change that to possible.
and I will add that to my vocabulary.
And then the last sentence of that section also says borrow in library.
One exit from the left at the very end.
Oh.
Isn't that true that? Is that
Lending. Unless we want to change everything to borrowing.
the cost will be assessed to the borrowing library? Isn't that true? But isn't that,
So
that's true.
that one is meant to be, we give a book to Buda.
Oh,
Buda destroys it. They're the ones who borrowed it and replaced it.
that's it. Good call.
Any other feedback?
In the San Marcos policy, they say the fee should be made payable directly to the lending library if there's damage. Is that true? I don't know how the process works.
Well, lending
The
is lending the book. What's
But
that?
paid directly. So like,
Oh, so it wouldn't go through the,
yeah, I was like, that's harsh. Just-
I wouldn't know it because every municipality has their own process for processing, invoicing and things like that. So I would just leave that kind of vague so that, and sometimes like accounting practices change too. So I would leave it vague so that we're not locked into any specific way.
Hearing no other feedback, I will amend and send out a clean copy for next meeting. With the intention being that we table it now, the option to reopen it in the future, but we probably won't take action until we know the long-term prospects of individual city ordinance changes.
Great start.
So with
Yeah,
that,
thank you so much.
Great start.
Thank you.
that in mind, is there a motion to table this policy until next meeting? It's been a motion, is there a second? Here, second, all in favor? Opposed? So we have eaten up all but 2 minutes of our allotted time. But we will move on to the library director's report.
Is it okay if I ask permission to move the Friends report first so that Elizabeth can not have to stay if she doesn't want to?
I just have Elizabeth Corey, I'm from the Friends School Library, and I just have one thing to say. We had our library director of the past 5 years retire at the beginning of March, and we hired someone that he hired on staff a couple of years ago. His name is Jody Watson, and he's going to be the interim director of the manager, I'm sorry, of the store. And that will last for an indefinite period of time until we identify who the successor to Bill Schmidt, who left, until we identify who that is. So Jody's been there then for a couple of years, and he's, I think, got the support of the staff and the Friends, and I think he's going to do a really good job.
so he's been his interim.
He's an interim, yeah.
Question.
Yes.
Have all the repairs been done?
No. Actually, they're close. There were a lot of insurance issues that had nothing to do with anything that, you know, we could help with, or that the staff could help with. But that got worked out. And the initial contractor who came the day that the accident happened has started work. And I think he's already, I know as of about a week ago, he had finished the wall repair, and they were starting with window repair, and then the brick was, I think, going to be last, but they had done the outside and inside walls absent the brick piece. So I don't know if you saw, but it was all about the age.
Yes, I was there a couple of weeks ago.
There was a support, a brick support column that was taken out by the car that hit the building. And so that caused the roof to sag, which caused pressure to the walls and just, and that's when the window blew up. She didn't hit the glass, but it's because of the wall compressing that caused that. So, but it's good news. It's taken a lot longer than we thought it should need to, but the contractor that we, had to come in to make the initial, reinforcing things and keeping it safe, was able to start work a couple of weeks ago, and it's almost finished.
And to your point earlier, does it make more sense in the future to let all the public comments kind of happen at once and we don't just sit through the entire meeting we don't want to? I wonder if that's a more effective and efficient use of your time.
I think it's totally your expression.
I just don't want to keep delayed if we don't have to.
Well, but all of this is information that I've been interested in for years, so my personal opinion, and Susan is not, and so she may feel the same way, that I don't have an interest in coming in and just saying my thing and then leaving. I would like to hear what's been going on in the Suburban. So I think the item, the Friends report should go on the agenda wherever you guys want it to, but I appreciate your kind of consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is okay.
So circling back, the library director's report.
Okay, so you can see the stats from this month. And I wanted to, thank Joy and Mary for coming for the city council meeting to support the library staff for that award. It was great to have y'all there. It felt good, and everything. Thank you so much. And anyone who watched online or just were there in spirit, I felt it. So just quickly, I met with Jennifer, the city secretary, Jennifer Kirkland, yesterday. We are just about at the point of sending the ordinance changes to the attorney. So we've moved along, made a lot of progress on that. The only thing that may slow it down is that it was realized in the process of doing this work that the Parks Board is also not under boards and commissions. And so she is going to meet with people there to find out if all of that can be done at once. If they aren't prepared to do that work, we're not going to let that slow us down. But if they're prepared and ready to just sort of jump on it and do it, then we'll do it all together. But at this point, she's going to find out probably within a couple days and find out if that's going to be done, which might take, if it's quick, then she'll do it. If it's going to be a while, then she'll say, okay, we'll do that in the next round and move forward with the library. So it should be going to the attorney pretty soon. But of course, the attorney has a lot on the plate, so once it gets there, it could be like a month or two before we get those ready to go to council. But it's moving along. We have the process for the board candidate, interviewing board candidates is happening. We had 12 applicants, and staff and I, a couple of people on our staff, we narrowed it down to 4 to recommend to the council. And we are interviewing some candidates on Monday, and then a couple others, we're trying to work out another date. So it's moving right along. Just while I'm thinking of it, I'm just going to throw this out there that I'm going to talk to Mayor Pro Tem, who's our city council liaison, on Monday when we do interviewing beforehand, just to find out what our process is for reappointments and all that, because that will be coming up before we know it. And there are people on our board right now who have to decide whether they want to stay with the board or not. And so I'm gonna get a little more information from him on, Monday, so that next meeting I'll have more information about that process. And then, we have some spring break events going on next week. A teen reptile event is going on. And our we have Irish step dancers coming on the 16th in honor of St. Patrick's Day. We have I think last time I did tell you about our seed library. Did I mention that? Well, on the 25th of this month, we're having a seed swap, which is the thing to do before you have a seed library, because it's an opportunity for people to bring seeds to sort of donate to the seed library and also exchange. And it's going to be kind of like an educational opportunity for people to learn about the seed library. We have some of our Hayes County Master Gardeners coming to be educating people about that. And then our big grand opening of the seed library is going to be on Earth Day. And we have some of our Hayes County Master Gardeners coming for that. We also are going to be having that people have an opportunity for people to donate books that day, sort of in a Earth Day recycling kind of energy, so that they can help supply our book sale that we're having in May. We have a lot of reading books, but we seem to have a lot more adult books than kids' books, so we're going to be really hoping to get a lot of kids' books. Let's see, we're having a teen job fair on April 29th. So if you know of any businesses that are interested in hiring teens this summer, let me know. Jen Cardenas, one of our staff members, is doing a great job coordinating all that with Chamber of Commerce, and it's just really fabulous work that she's doing there. We have a very full calendar lined up for our summer reading program, and we'll be doing outreach to schools in April and May. We had a wonderful International Women's Day event yesterday at City Hall. HR put that on for the staff. It was wonderful. One thing that I just implemented with our full-time staff, when I first started and I talked to everyone about how they thought things were going, there was quite an interest in having a shorter day potentially. And one of the ways we did that was offering shorter lunches so that they could be, instead of being here 9 hours a day and taking an 8-10-hour lunch, being here 8.5 hours and taking a half-hour lunch. So this March calendar, we just integrated that being an option of having either an hour lunch or a half-hour lunch, so that people could either come in later or leave earlier. So that's been very well received. Our Overdrive as a whole is going away, and it's transitioning to Libby. And so I have staff creating tutorials on how to make that transition from Overdrive to Libby. Some of it's going to be it's just going to happen, but for people to know, like, if their resources, what's going to happen to their resources. National Library Week is April 23rd to 29th. The theme this year is called There's More to the Story. And we're going to be closed on May the 24th for professional development. And I have someone lined up to come and speak to staff at the professional development, sort of inspirational kind of speaker. And she's coming from Dallas. Her name is Felicia Benton. I heard her speak at the leadership conference I went to in January up in Fort Worth. And we also are doing our AED CPR training. And the Friends are also treating us to lunch as a way to celebrate the award that we won. And so that'll be a great day. The library will be closed. And I just have been doing a lot of updates to the website. I now have the library board on our website, which it wasn't there before, and just making a lot of other tweaks and helping. Rachel in the communications is also helping me to make it a little prettier, which hasn't happened yet, but it's getting there. So that is it for me.
If there are no questions there, We will conclude continued business and move on to new business, consideration and possible action to review and propose changes to the collection development policy. We should have that packet. Do you want to speak on this one first?
Yeah, if you don't mind, it won't be too long because we'll do, this will be one that we do the work after, while we're away. And then, the collection development policy, as far as I can tell, is, one of our policies that I think is in the best condition overall in terms of not needing as much, modifying. I think it's a really, and it's one that I see, looks like it was, approved by the board, approved by city council. I mean, it seems like the most formal of all of our processes, of our policies. And which is good because it's the one that probably needs it to be. So this is one that is pretty long. And the reason it's long, it's because it has a whole bunch of appendices that are recommended by the American Library Association to be part of a solid and good collection development policy. So that's why there's so many pages. And they literally are just taken straight from the American Library Association. So they're not something that they're not to be edited because they're not our documents. So that would be the appendices like A through G. So really the policy is, the part that's up for sort of modifying is really just, and I'm looking at the whole thing, so I don't know.
It's 4 pages.
Yeah, it's 4 pages. Yeah, it's really 4 pages. So it's not that much. And then the sheet that I gave you all tonight that has it's a double-sided sheet and it has red in here.
Yeah.
This is what I would recommend adding to the part that says, right now it's called objections to library materials. This is what I propose we change to here, and it's called reconsideration of library materials. And this is actually very close to what I did when I was in Hutto. And this was after doing a lot of webinars and professional development training around the whole reconsideration of materials that is happening a lot currently. So the advantage that this policy, this version has is that there are very clearly defined steps with very specific timelines. And the legal counsel from the American Library Association recommended all of that as for liability issues and for just to sort of give yourself time in the board and so that also typically when people feel as though they're upset about something, when they see that there's a process and there's a chance to be heard and there are people, not just one person like deciding that there's a process to be heard and to have things reviewed. So that's why I established, with consultation with other people and the attorney at ALA, who was very, very helpful, the steps. Because it makes people who are wanting materials reconsidered feel more heard, and it puts everyone in a little bit more of a clear understanding of what's going to happen and what to do if they don't like their response. And of course, it's open for feedback and stuff. It doesn't mean that just because it's in red and underlined and italics, I was just trying to make it stand out. But it doesn't mean it has to be this way, but it's I would just say that, I mean, it's open for feedback. It's just that, it's the part that I think our current policy is lacking.
Can I ask one more kind of like framing question,
Mhm.
Colleen, in addition to the information you provided? So in terms of the appendices, the ones that are from ALA go through Appendix B, and then Appendix H is the current form for the citizens' request for reconsideration of library materials.
Mhm.
And I didn't know if you had any insights on whether that's something that ALA has a suggested form actually that we might replace this one with, or whether you think this form is as it should be in its current state.
This one, I think we could evaluate.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can, before we meet again, determine if, the ALA's recommendations for what should be in this form. I didn't really look at this form with a fine tooth comb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ALA has a form that already, do they have the form already?
I don't know.
That would be like a basis.
Yeah, I could double check to see what theirs is like, if they have one.
So our work is to take these materials back with us, look them over, and then come back to that. Is that correct?
I think so.
And where did you say to insert this? In what section?
It would be under the part that says,
This big packet.
it's number 9. Yeah.
Oh, okay, objections to library materials.
Right, so that's our homework for the month, is to review this one, come back for discussion in the month. And you're gonna look into see if there's other forms or things that are already recommended in case appendix H needs to be modified as well. That one, understand it?
This, even this page share the citizens. Yeah, that's the one I'm gonna double check with the ALA and see about that. And does it seem like this is one that we need someone like to do what you did with the last one, Spencer, or do we just, I don't know what the process would be.
Seeing as we have a draft version in red, I think maybe it's more efficient next month that we take this as that standing draft. We'll come back to the table with individual ideas and do the same thing we just did tonight, but with this as the base.
Well, these are already list steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to change that.
And the other thing is that the things that are really super important that, they really recommended and I added was, one is, a valid library card holder. That's one of the things that like, and then the other thing that's super important is for the duration of this process, the material in question will remain in circulation. That's a really important one. And then the other one that's really important is, once the decision is made, it's the final decision. Once validated by the process, materials shall not be eligible for further reevaluation as each challenged item has been through a rigorous review. So that's saying that
Once
a
it's
year
done,
from now, if somebody comes and says they're challenging this book that's already been reviewed by the board, by the staff, it's not gonna happen again. Those were like the really critical things that they had sort of said, make sure your policy says those things, just because, those, just from I mean, they do a study on all this stuff, they teach statistics on all this stuff, and they sort of just were recommending that those are things to stay in there or get put in there.
I just had a thought that related to a different policy that we may want to put a pin in terms of it being important for someone who makes a challenge of reconsideration of library materials being a valid library card holder. And I feel like I remember the library card holder policy for this library is different than many libraries because you do not have to be living in Kyle to get a library card. Is that true? Okay.
That would be interesting, right, if there was a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, but if they're cardholders,
Interesting. Yeah, that could be something that, I mean, when we talk about library card, how to get a library card, that could be something that I mean, I don't know the history of how it came to be,
came about.
yeah.
I agree that it's a good point to put a pin in for discussion when we get to the policies on who's eligible, in that it may not be appropriate to put inside of this policy for that item,
yeah.
but the implications there are important to think through.
Who would know why it's done? Who would know how that policy started, that anyone, I mean, they don't have to live in Kyle.
And I could check with Kara, our assistant
Yeah,
director,
she's
she
been
has
here.
been here a long time,
Yeah,
and she might actually know, how
yeah.
that came to pass, because it is pretty unusual,
And maybe because people live in
Mountain City.
Mountain City may not have a library.
Well, they don't have.
I mean, they definitely don't have a Mountain City library, but they may not have a library that belongs to them that they could go to.
We are the library.
And I know that because we get funding from Hayes County, that there's, I mean, it has to be Hayes, but I mean, I still think that not having any restriction, it's just anyone in the state of. Yeah.
Right, and I'm thinking, because I know I had a card from San Marcos for the longest, but I don't, if it was because it was Hayes, I had no issues at, so.
I just renewed my case, my San Marcos card, and it was a resident of San Marcos or
Hayes,
Hayes.
okay,
It's
so
the same thing with Mayor Duffy. I have a question about the challenges. Is it okay if I ask it?
Sure.
If we have a challenge from someone who, say my child has a library card and I don't, and I object to a book that I notice at the library, do I have to have my own card? Or make my 6-year-old come to a city council meeting or whatever? How would that work if the parent who's objecting doesn't have a card? Or would they?
Well, I think that would be like a parent would have the right, because that, when you have a card, a child has a card, the parent assumes responsibility.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
It's a card out.
Yeah, and the reason for the saying that that person has to have a valid card is because of community standards. Because I feel like, there have been people who are going around to places all around the country and, getting a group of people to try to decide what a community that they don't live in should have in their library. And so that's kind of where that criteria became important, because of the climate in that we're in. So that's kind of why, why that is stipulated. Yeah.
Is there any more discussion on this topic? Or is there a motion to table until next month?
Motion to table until next month.
There is a motion. It's been a second. All in favor? Opposed? All right. So that brings us down to the last item on the agenda, which are announcements. Next meeting of the library board will be Thursday, April 13th, 2023. I know that so to go along the lines of that, normally we solicit feedback and agenda items that week prior. I may rely on you, if you don't mind, to help out with that downtown that week, just in case I can't. That's okay. But we will still plan to have the updated training manual from you, Morgan. I have the updated policy on interlibrary loan. We will provide the policy on the collection development for discussion. And any other agenda items that are proposed by the board notified before the 7th. That way, we can make sure it's posted on the agenda within the required timeframe.
Sounds good.
If there are no other items, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move
There's a motion. Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:26. And Jessica will need to sign the meeting minutes before we forget.
Thank you. Who seconded the motion to adjourn?
Gracie.
I feel like Gracie made the motion to adjourn.
No, she already.
Okay, sorry.
It was simultaneous.
Sometimes I'm typing and I'm trying to do it by voice. Thank you all.